goes Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava. And basically, as a good Hindu girl, what that means is to respect your mother and respect your father. And I'm going to be doing the exact opposite of that. Meet Muralidhara Srikantara Deshpande. If you think his name is long, you should hear my grandfather's name, Trayambakara Srikantara Deshpande. Yeah, the names really sound like they're warriors going into battle. And what battle, you ask? Well, our Peshwa ancestors were bravely fighting off their enemies. My dad and my grandfather faced the battle of every Desi dad after the age of 35, chronic back pain. To tell you a little bit about my dad, I created a little Instagram bio for him as if he were a member of Gen Z. Bangalore, Karnataka, India, to Omaha, Nebraska, USA. Proud Karnataka, avid chai drinker, dad and jokester, hashtag dad jokes are funny, science is real, lover of rice and lol. Oh, whoops, gotta go back. Yeah, my dad's he's a little basic, but that's okay. He acts like he's 402 years old, just like every other Desi dad, and he's been acting that way since he was 30. But also my dad is on FaceTime, so I should probably be careful with what I'm saying. Hi, Daddy. They're still gonna pay next month's credit card bill, right? Anyways, I'm just joking. I'm gonna be a little bit nicer to my dad from here on out, I promise. Above all, my dad is one of the most hardworking, resilient people I know, and his story is a testament to the power of the South Asian community, as well as brown grit, determination, and strength. So a little bit about my dad. He was born in rural Karnataka in a small town called Badki, which is famous for its chili. He was born to my grandfather, who was an elementary school government teacher who studied until the 10th standard, and my grandmother, a housewife who was only in school until the 2nd grade. Needless to say, money was not plentiful in my dad's family. My tata was known for being an incredibly strict and disciplined man, but he is the reason that my dad and his siblings had a strong foundation of core values. And my grandma's maternal, kind, and nurturing nature is the reason that she raised strong, gentle men. In total, my grandparents had 8 children, 7 boys and 1 girl, only 6 of whom survived, making it 5 boys and 1 girl. Between my dad and his directly older brother, there were 2 children that didn't make it. My grandparents tragically lost these 2 boys when they were toddlers due to diarrhea and dehydration. Because of their rural location and lack of access to high-quality health care, my grandparents had to endure the loss of 2 of their babies. The amount of pain my grandparents had to bear is unimaginable. But these 2 proved throughout their life that they were very resilient individuals, and as a result, they ended up raising 6 strong children. As a young boy, my dad's hobbies included pissing my tata off, bullying his younger brother to the verge of tears, and being shy around girls. He was not quite the Wizard of Oz, yet, and eventually my dad's family moved to a medium-sized town where he went to high school and scored well enough on an exam to get into a government school university where he studied veterinary science. My dad describes his college days fondly as the best days of his life, to which my mom asks, what about the day we got married? And to which I ask, what about the day I was born? And my dad, at that exact moment, chooses to get engrossed in a WhatsApp article on his phone about how turmeric is magically going to be preventing COVID-19. Just kidding, my dad is a man of science. He doesn't believe in all that. But he also doesn't believe that the ancestry test I took that says I'm 2% Finnish is accurate, so you win some and you lose some. My dad enjoyed his college days quite a bit. He went on a bicycle tour. He spent hours taking those photos, by the way. He went on a bicycle tour across Karnataka, took the train all over India, and as time permitted, he would study to actually be a veterinarian. He became really close with some of his classmates, and they referred to themselves as the trendsetters. Now, what trends they were setting, I still don't really know. But over 30 years later, they still meet up with one another and have reunions. In all seriousness, my dad worked very hard and became Dr. Muralidhar Deshpande, by the age of 21. And here I am, nearly 20 years old, and I'm still causing problems. Like, I set my oven mitt on fire the other day in my kitchen. But my dad credits his brothers with making him the person that he is today. By the time my dad was in 9th grade, my grandfather had retired from teaching. From that point onwards, for over a decade, my dad's brothers supported him financially through the rest of high school, his bachelor's and his master's. My uncles were also my dad's biggest cheerleaders. They were there to celebrate his highs, and they were there to pick him up when he was at his lows. When my dad found out that he was accepted into his veterinary science program, my uncle was with him, and he was beaming with pride when my dad told him that he got in. So after finishing his master's, when my dad decided to move to the United States, leaving behind his family was more difficult than words can describe. In 1994, my grandmother suffered a massive stroke which left her paralyzed on her right side and unable to speak in complete sentences. She required round-the-clock care which my uncles and their wives provided. On the morning of December 25th, 1996, my dad left Bangalore to come to Lincoln, Nebraska, in America to do his PhD. As he walked into the Bangalore airport, he said goodbye to my sick grandmother, who was in tears, and my uncles, who may not have expressed their pain on the outside, but were riddled with heartbreak internally. My dad arrived in the US with $200 in his pocket. Insert thrift shop joke here. But he attended the University of Nebraska Medical Center to do his PhD in veterinary immunology. Funny enough, even after all of this veterinary stuff he did, my dad didn't let me get a dog for a really long time. So #fake fan. My dad had moments of regret, often wondering why he left his family behind and started a whole new life, which I'm sure is a feeling that some of us have felt when we came to college. My dad was only able to communicate with his family once every 3 weeks because it was quite expensive to call them more frequently. My grandparents wanted nothing more than to see their son, and I could never imagine only calling my parents every 3 weeks. I literally call my dad at the smallest inconvenience because every time I go home I forget how to fill gas in my car, so I have to call my dad for that all the time. Eventually, my dad was summoned back home at the end of 1998 with the intention of getting married. Now this is the OG love story. Where is it? Here we go. Muralidhar Deshpande had almost given up hope on finding the love of his life when by chance he had the opportunity to meet with a beautiful woman named Asha Jayaprakash. A meeting was set up. My dad may not have had a lot of praise, like I said earlier, but all of it manifested in this one moment and made him, as I like to say, what was it? It was Muralidhar Deshpande, if you will. So my dad laid eyes on my mom, talked to her for a bit, and made up his mind immediately. He did not, by any means, want to be messing around because he was in a time crunch. So for once, he wasn't running on Indian Standard Time. He told my mom that he agreed and that he would need a decision from her within 3 hours. Thank God she said yes, or else you would not be blessed by my beautiful presence here today. But they went from strangers to spouses in 2 weeks. I mean, honestly, who needs Tinder when you can just have arranged marriages instead? But a few months after getting married, my mom moved to the United States, and thus began my parents' married life in the US. These first few years of marriage were difficult, and my parents struggled financially because both of them were graduate students living paycheck to paycheck trying to save their money. Their immigration status was also another point of stress as they had to keep renewing their visas and look for jobs who would hire them. But the most difficult part was when my dad left India after his wedding in 1999. He had no idea that that would be the last time he saw his father. In 2000, my grandfather suffered from 2 hip fractures, became depressed and frail, and eventually passed away. From her massive stroke in 1994 up until her passing in 2001, my grandmother required round-the-clock care and was not completely there emotionally. Even at my parents' wedding, my grandmother was very minimally mobile. My dad saw her for the last time in 2001 and was mentally prepared to say goodbye to her. She passed away later in that year. My dad lost his parents relatively earlier in life and was not able to be there for either of their passings or funeral rites. He wasn't able to be there physically to support his brothers and vice versa. Both my paternal grandparents passed away within 9 months of each other, with their son on the other half of the world. But with that being said, my dad also has great memories from his first few years in America. He became great friends with his roommates, one of whom is still our very close friend today. And my dad started attending weekly pageants in Lincoln, which allowed him to meet a strong group of South Asian immigrants in the town. My dad credits the Lincoln Pageant Group with being his family here in the U.S. They gave my dad food, emotional support, good company, and above all, showed my dad that even though he was away from India, he still had a family wherever he was. When my parents got married and first came to the U.S., the aunties and uncles in India threw my mom a welcome party. When my dad's mom passed away, they comforted my dad, brought him food, and took care of him. They even pulled money together to help him buy a car and to send him to India at some point as well. Though we only lived in Lincoln for a few years after I was born, I always have and always will have incredible love for the people in Lincoln because they are our family. Eventually, my parents had the greatest blessing of their life, me. I'm an only child, which means that my parents got it right on the first try. So they were both able to find stable jobs, and we moved to Omaha and formed another community of tight-knit South Asian families. But this time, my parents were able to give back and pass on the kindness that they received by helping out recent Indian immigrants. While we deal with racism, prejudice, and being treated differently than white Americans, we've come to love Nebraska. It is our home. It's where my parents built a life from the ground up all by themselves, and it's where I grew up surrounded by the people I love. At the end of the day, my dad's story might seem like another immigrant story, and it absolutely is. But what we have to understand is the power of the immigrant story. Each immigrant story is unique, important to share, and incredibly inspirational. There is nothing basic about an immigrant story. These stories of resilience deserve to be respected and celebrated. Through perseverance, determination, and support from his community, my dad went from being born into a poor rural family in India to becoming a published veterinary scientist and PhD, discovering groundbreaking medicine in the United States. My dad, an immigrant man, helped discover the vaccine for canine influenza. This is the immigrant story. My dad has had to overcome countless financial, mental, and emotional difficulties throughout his life. And honestly, I don't think I could do what he did. Going for years without seeing his family, bravely moving to a new country with a completely different culture, staying here and working hard to provide an incredible life for his wife and daughter. But rather than giving up, he decided to continue pushing through because he could see the light at the end of the tunnel. My dad's story is not complete without recognizing my incredible mother. She also worked very hard to get to where she is today, and words cannot express how much I admire her. She also left her family, moved to a completely new country, supported my dad through his PhD, had a baby while doing her master's, and pursued her own career as a statistician. I truly don't know how she does it all. She has an incredible work ethic, is a girl boss, a wife, daughter, and sister, and a mother to a very needy, independent adult child, and an active member in our community back at home. My dad is my best friend. We butt heads sometimes, most of the time, but he is the reason that I have become the strong, independent young woman I am today. I'm a complete daddy's girl through and through, and being pre-med, I've called my dad in tears more times than I can count. My dad nurtures my curiosity in science, engages in fiery political discourse with me, and will go above and beyond to ensure my happiness in life. I love my dad so much, and it is truly my life's greatest blessing to have the parents that I have. Two people who have worked their tushies off to ensure that I have every opportunity available for me to follow my dreams and succeed. And if I were granted one wish in life, it's that for all my remaining lifetimes, I am born to the same parents. So I'd like to reintroduce my dad. So meet Dr. Muralidhar Srikantarao Deshpande, PhD in immunology, tells the worst dad jokes that are funny to no one but him. I once told my dad that the cashier at Walgreens was sweet, and he goes, "Did you lick her?" He's a Gemini, but don't hold that against him. I might be a little bit biased because I'm a Gemini too, so my mom's always like, "You both are such typical Geminis." I still can't really tell if that's a compliment or a criticism, but I'll take what I can get. Actually, I might just have to consult Prem Jyotish. I don't know if you guys remember him, but the rookie astrologer from Star Plus. But I'd like to thank my dad for sitting on the phone with me for the past week, for hours every day, answering all my questions, and also for digging through the countless photo albums that we have at home to send me pictures for these slides. And if there's anything that I want you to take away from this speech, it's that our parents are genuinely incredible. As children growing up in two different cultures, it's natural that we don't always see eye to eye with our parents, as Suhas was saying earlier. But most of us can appreciate the hard work, perseverance, and sacrifice it took for our parents to give us the life that we have today. For many of us second-generation immigrants, we will never be able to fully grasp how much our parents had to struggle and how much they've given to us. But we can show them that our appreciation, gratitude, and love. Also, the power of the South Asian community is amazing. The Lincoln community is where my parents felt at home, supported them, and gave my parents a sense of family. And for us, Project Rishi is evidence of what happens when we as a South Asian community are able to band together. We form a family and make a difference in the lives of others. So finally, this brings me to the end of my speech. I know this was a really long one, but if you're wondering what Dr. Deshpande is up to today, he spends his days doing complicated research that I will never fully understand. Like a typical suburban Midwestern dad, my dad spends copious amounts of time on our lawn trying to make sure it looks good. He will fully judge other suburban dads based on the quality of their lawn. He refuses to get rid of our 20-year-old minivan that we've had since before I was born, and it's literally worth $300 now. And he claims he doesn't know a lot of people and then proceeds to have a better social life than I do back at home. And he's also busy getting emotionally attached to the foster dogs that he didn't want in the first place. Above all, he's busy listening to me, his daughter, complain about the minor inconveniences in my life, preventing me from doing anything stupid and being my #1 supporter as I continue somewhat stumbling my way through life and occasionally calling him in tears. I originally titled this speech Brown and Immigrant, which was kind of basic, not gonna lie. But after hearing my dad's story and knowing that there are millions of other incredible immigrants just like him, it is apparent that immigrants are resilient. Therefore, my speech is called Brown and Invincible.